The sun burns above the arena, and the sand beneath her knees is scorching, yet she barely feels it. What she feels is the cold paralysis of fear. The roar that surrounds her does not come from the bull breathing heavily beside her, a mountain of muscle restrained by chains. The roar comes from thousands of voices in the stands, a sea of people who have gathered to watch her die. The guard's hand on her head is not comfort. It is possession. Her life no longer belongs to her, and it certainly does not belong to the gods. It belongs to the crowd. In ancient Rome, death was not always hidden behind prison walls. Sometimes it was the main attraction in arenas across the empire. From Britain to the deserts of Syria, crowds filled massive stadiums to watch punishments turned into spectacles. Many people today imagine the Roman arena as a place where gladiators fought heroic battles. Those fights did happen, but they were only part of the story. The darker truth was something far more disturbing. Rome had a punishment called damnatio at bestias, which meant condemnation to the beasts, criminals, prisoners of war, and sometimes people accused of religious disobedience were thrown into the arena to face wild animals. Lions, bears, bulls, and other creatures were released to tear them apart while thousands watched. The purpose was not only execution, it was a public demonstration of power. Rome wanted everyone to see what happened to those who challenged its authority. The crimes that could lead someone to this fate were not always extraordinary. Treason and murder could certainly bring such punishment, but so could desertion, arson, or even refusing to worship the emperor's gods. In some periods, Christians were executed this way simply because they followed a different faith. The arena became a place where the empire displayed control over both body and belief. But simple executions were not enough to satisfy the audience for long. Roman officials responsible for organizing the games competed to create more shocking spectacles. The arena slowly transformed into a stage where myths and legends were recreated, using real human lives. One infamous example was inspired by the Greek story of Icarus, the boy who flew too close to the sun with wings made of wax. In some arenas, condemned prisoners were forced to play the role of Icarus. They were taken to a tall structure in the center of the arena and given artificial wings made of wax and feathers. The crowd watched as the prisoner was pushed from the height. For a brief moment it looked like flight. Then the wax failed and the body crashed onto the sand. The myth had been turned into a deadly performance. Another horrifying spectacle recreated the punishment of Dirce from Greek mythology. In the story, Dirce is tied to a wild bull and dragged to her death. Roman games sometimes forced condemned women to suffer the same fate, bound to the horns of a raging bull. The victim would be thrown and dragged across the arena until the body was broken beyond recognition. For the audience, it was theater. For the victim, it was terror beyond imagination. Some punishments were even more cruel because they were designed to prolong suffering. During the reign of Emperor Nero, there were reports of executions involving what later writers called the tunic of pain. Victims were wrapped in clothing soaked with flammable materials. Like pitch or tar, they were tied to posts and set on fire, turning them into living torches. These executions sometimes took place at night, lighting gardens or arenas with burning bodies while spectators watched the flames and listened to the screams. All of this served a clear purpose. It reminded everyone that the emperor's power was absolute. Rome could not only take a life, it could transform a person into a prop in a deadly performance. Yet even these brutal spectacles were not the limit of Roman imagination. Some emperors wanted something even grander, something that demonstrated the scale of their power. That ambition led to one of the most astonishing and disturbing spectacles ever staged, the naumachia, or mock naval battle. In certain events, massive arenas were flooded with water to recreate a battlefield at sea. Engineers used canals and underground systems to fill the space with enormous amounts of water, transforming the arena into a temporary lake. Once the water was ready, ships were brought in, real ships, sometimes built to resemble historical war vessels. Thousands of condemned prisoners or captured soldiers were placed on these ships and divided into opposing sides. They were given real weapons and ordered to fight. When the signal sounded, the ships rammed each other and the men fought across the decks. Some drowned. Others were cut down in brutal close combat. The water quickly turned red. One famous naval spectacle took place during the reign of Emperor Claudius on a large lake outside Rome. Ancient sources claim that nearly 20,000 men were forced to participate. Before the battle began, the condemned reportedly cried out to the emperor with the phrase, "Hail Caesar, those who are about to die salute you." It was not a greeting of loyalty, but a grim acknowledgement of their fate. For the spectators, these battles were thrilling displays of chaos and destruction. For the participants, they were hopeless struggles where survival depended on killing others who were just as desperate. Even after such enormous spectacles, the appetite of the crowd continued to grow. Over time, the games became stranger and more cruel. Some gladiators were forced to fight under bizarre conditions designed to entertain rather than test skill. One type of fighter was known as the anabata. These gladiators wore helmets that covered their eyes, leaving them effectively blind. Armed with weapons, but unable to see, they swung wildly while trying to locate their opponent by sound alone. The crowd laughed at missed strikes and clumsy movements. Skill no longer mattered. The fight had become a cruel game of chance. Organizers also experimented with unusual matches meant to shock the audience. Dwarfs, women gladiators, and other unusual fighters were sometimes forced into the arena for spectacle. The goal was not fairness or honor. It was novelty. This constant search for something new revealed a darker truth about the society watching these games. Violence had become so common that ordinary bloodshed was no longer enough. The audience demanded bigger, stranger, and more shocking displays. Eventually, the corruption of the arena reached the highest level of Roman power. The emperor himself stepped into the spectacle. Commodus, the son of the philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius, ruled Rome in the late 2nd century. Instead of focusing on governing the empire, Commodus became obsessed with the games. He wanted more than to watch them. He wanted to be part of them, breaking one of Rome's greatest taboos. The emperor entered the arena as a gladiator. For the Roman elite, this was scandalous. Gladiators were usually slaves, prisoners, or men of very low status. An emperor fighting in the arena was seen as degrading the dignity of the throne. But Commodus did not see it that way. He saw himself as a hero, even comparing himself to the legendary figure Hercules. His battles, however, were rarely fair. Opponents were often forced to fight with wooden weapons or were chosen specifically because they could not truly threaten him. Some were wounded soldiers or disabled men brought into the arena so that the emperor could easily defeat them. He also staged animal hunts, killing exotic creatures brought from across the empire. According to the historian Cassius Dio, Commodus once killed dozens of lions in a single event. Instead of facing them directly, he often attacked from a safe distance with a bow or spear. Even more astonishing was the fact that Commodus charged the Roman treasury enormous sums. For each appearance, the ruler of the empire had turned himself into a paid performer while the state funded the show. For many Romans, this behavior symbolized something deeply wrong. The arena, once a place where Rome demonstrated control and discipline, had become a theater of vanity and cruelty led by the emperor himself. Commodus did not die in the arena as he might have imagined. His end came quietly inside the palace. After a failed attempt to poison him, a wrestler named Narcissus was sent to kill him. Commodus was strangled in his bath, ending the life of the emperor who had tried to become Rome's greatest gladiator. The arenas of Rome were more than entertainment venues. They were mirrors of the society that built them. What began as punishment for criminals evolved into elaborate spectacles of cruelty, where myths were reenacted with human victims. Naval battles were staged for amusement, and even the emperor joined the performance. The roaring crowds, the blood-stained sand, and the endless search for more shocking displays revealed a civilization wrestling with its own hunger for power and spectacle. In the end, the arena showed not only Rome's strength, but also the darker side of its culture, where human lives could be transformed into entertainment for thousands.